Hey guys, welcome to the Brie Myself and God channel where I'm bringing you all things Brie and all things God. And I have to talk to you guys today about this Harriet movie. When I tell y'all, this movie blessed my life, got me together. I wasn't even gonna talk about this for my video this month. I was gonna talk about another part of my testimony, kind of a continuation of my first video. But nah, we having a change of plans. We'll get back to regularly scheduled programming next time, but I just have to sit here and talk to you guys about this movie. I want to give my overall impressions and review, but what I really want to share with you is just the way that it blessed me, the things that I think we can take away from it, especially those of us who can relate to Harriet Tubman because of the calling on our lives and maybe the way that some of us feel about justice and the importance of that in our lives and in our futures. So yeah, let's get into it. First of all, I just want to say I appreciate that this movie was not trauma porn, it's a movie about slavery, and I just didn't know if I was going to be walking into scenes of whippings and beatings and just terrible things to watch. I already take in a lot of that stuff on a regular basis because I study criminal justice in my master's program, and I'm constantly reading about, policing, police brutality, the terrible statistics about mass incarceration. I do an internship where my clients are currently in jail, a lot of them, and facing time, and it can be a lot. And I really came to the Harriet movie just wanting to be inspired and encouraged. And I was, y'all. That's an understatement. I feel like I've just gotten life breathed into me that is going to help propel me forward as I move into my purpose, because the way I was starting to feel discouraged about justice issues, when I feel like part of my calling is to be an advocate around these issues, I was like, this is not going to be sustainable. If I feel this hopeless and this defeated, and I'm only 24 and I'm just getting started in my journey to hopefully be a change agent, I can't be this weighted down and heavy and discouraged about these issues. And so just the level of encouragement and inspiration that I got is not even something that I think is just for this weekend. I think that her story is one that I will continue to lean on when I move forward. And I'll tell you more about what I feel like we can take away from that. I feel like it was inspirational. It wasn't traumatic. The acting was superb. I'm not really going to get into the whole Cynthia Erivo thing too much. It's not the focus of this video. I will say, I think she did a phenomenal job. I think she has a phenomenal voice. But if the tweets that I saw about how she feels about Black Americans, or the way that I've seen her making fun of us, that's not cool. And I really feel like for these stories, they could try to just cast somebody who actually is of that lineage. It would just make it that much more, meaningful. We're all a part of the diaspora, but there really is something powerful about Black American descendants of slavery getting a chance to tell our own stories and be a part of that. But that's all I'm gonna say on that, because the movie still blessed me too much. I can't even discount it based on that. So I'm gonna say that, and then I'm still gonna tell you about why I love this movie. So this is one of the first things that I feel like came out of it for me, is that God hears the cries of the oppressed. One of the first things that, one of her master's sons said that I thought was just a terrible thing to say, and an even more terrible thing to believe, is that God doesn't listen to niggers. The level of delusion that people had, white people in particular, in the time of slavery, to really think that they somehow owned access to God and his ear is preposterous. Not preponderance of evidence. Okay, anyway, preposterous. It's a lie that he doesn't hear us. And I feel like the movie really showed how Harriet had a very intimate relationship with God. Black people are created in the image of God, just like every other race of people. God hears us and is inclined to us and wants us to be in relationship with him just like anybody else. And I think that was beautifully shown in this movie. And that it was shown that the people who don't believe that are the ones that were confused and delusional. And also, they were using Christianity to kind of push this narrative justifying slavery, which we all know happened. We all know that's the history. We all know about how this faith has been colonized. And I hated seeing that church service where, you know, these people are enslaved and they have this black preacher telling them, be obedient to your master, honor them, yada, yada. Because it's such a small piece of what's really in the Bible about justice. And what I know and what I feel like this movie highlighted is that God is a God of justice. And I love seeing that because, one, let me just address this biblical use, Bible use to justify slavery thing. Two things. One, the type of slavery that the Bible is referencing is not even close to what, there is nothing in this world that ever has existed or does exist that it reaches the level of inhumanity and just cruelty that is embodied in American chattel slavery. Whatever the Greeks and Romans were doing over there, from my understanding, it was much more about paying off debt. It was something that you committed yourself into to pay off your debt. And it was like you were treated like a person and with respect, and it was almost like a job, but you were just, your pay was going towards paying off your debt. That's one thing. Two, just because the Bible has an instruction for a certain set of circumstances doesn't mean that the Bible condones those circumstances. So even if the instruction was for slaves to like respect their masters, doesn't necessarily mean that God condones slavery. It's more about your character in the context that you're in. Just the same way that God might ask me in a job to respect and honor my boss, even if I don't like them or don't agree with them. I'm not comparing that to American chattel slavery, but just as a principle, I'm saying that just because there's instructions for a context doesn't mean that context is ideal to God. And also, I think that in the same way that there is instructions for submission in the Bible, there's also instructions for resistance. And there are glorified examples of resisting inhumane and unrighteous systems, such as the story of the three Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they were under a king that told them to worship another god and they refused to do so, and they were sentenced to death because they were breaking the law. And so I believe that we have examples. Jesus was even seen as breaking the Jewish law. Moses, who Harriet Tubman was nicknamed after, was known for taking his people out of Egypt when they were technically under the rule of the Egyptian slave owners. And so I think that we have plenty of biblical precedent to know that God is not about us just sitting here under oppressive systems and letting the days go by. We have to fight for our freedom. And I believe that God helps us in that. And one thing I think comes out of Harriet Tubman's story as well is that God will send the one to save the many. And I think this is an especially powerful thing for like those of us that are Black or feel like we're a part of a marginalized group, because I feel like we can have a lot of survivor's guilt and feeling like, well, you know, I made it out of this situation, whether it be poverty, whether it be, you know, a neighborhood environment where you could have been killed, ended up dead or in jail, and you know other people that did end up that way, and now you're out and you maybe went and got your degree. You might be in a PhD program, you might be in a high-paying job, and it's just like this guilt, because I know I've experienced of being like, how did I get it better than like my people? Like, how come, you know, in my position, how I was able to be the one to like, I'm originally from Detroit, but my family moved out of the city when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I was able to go to the suburban schools and get the higher quality education and live in a safe neighborhood and have the things that I needed to go off to Princeton eventually. And then people would look at me and say, well, you were just smart, or you were just hardworking, or you just must be so talented. And I'm like, if my people had the same opportunities that I had, if more of us had those same opportunities, more of us would do the same things I'm doing and other amazing things as well. And so that guilt of being one of the people that got those opportunities when you know that so many others didn't, what helps me and what I think comes out in Harriet's story is that God will take that one person and send them back to be able to open the doors of freedom and justice and opportunity for other people from that group. The other thing is that you can doubt that God sent her, but the proof that she was sent by God was in the power. She never lost a slave. She went back and forth multiple times back to the South to free people from slavery. It was a dangerous, life-threatening situation, and she never lost a slave. She gives the credit that God gave her the routes that she needed to know how to go, you know, the right places, know where not to go, where to go, and how to keep everybody safe. And so it's like people, you know, when she gave her testimony that God had spoken to her, people said that, you know, the guy wrote down possible brain damage. And I'm just like, you know what? The proof is in the power. You can believe that God didn't send her, but when she's able to bring back way more people than you and keep them all safe, you can't tell me God's not with her. Another thing that I saw was like, that I appreciated was that she was empowered by the divine, but she was fully human. I read an article that critiqued the Harriet movie because Harriet Tubman was seen as almost like divine or divinely inspired. And this one writer said that it made her less relatable and that it just made her seem less human. But you know what? Harriet Tubman was human. She got down and she prayed, and she had so much pain, and she cried out in her loss. She cried out in confusion, like when she thought she was going back to save her husband, but her husband had moved on and married another person. Like the pain of that, you could see her humanity, I thought. But the thing is, she drew supernatural strength and wisdom from God. And that does not have to be something that we cannot relate to, because the same God that was with Harriet is alive today. He is alive forevermore, and he is available to anybody that wants to lean into him and know him and live their life with and for him. And so I thought that it was a beautiful mixture of like divinity and humanity, and being empowered by the supernatural, but being only a frail human being. But this is my overall review of the Harriet Tubman movie. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. I had so much to say. Yeah, but that's mostly it. Just the message of hope and the fact that like she was able to see it through, right? Like she had a vision. She said, God has shown me the future and my people are free. And that God allowed her to see that in her lifetime, that she was able to be somebody that fought for justice in the Civil War. I think that was just really powerful, and that's something that we all need to hold on to. Get a sense of your vision for justice, get a sense of what you're hoping in, and hold on to that, because we need it for this journey. So that's my overall impression of the Harriet Tubman movie, the things I think we learn about God and justice from it. I'm gonna make a whole nother video for anybody that really, really identifies with Harriet Tubman. You know God, or you love God, and you feel like he's called you to walk and work in the realm of social justice or redemption for your people. Like, I have some things that I want to say to you guys that I took away from this movie that I feel like can really, really help us. And I want to pray for you guys. And so that's going to be like the very next video. I'm probably about to post these back to back. So this is the Bring Myself in God channel. This is my review of the Harriet Tubman movie. Stay tuned for more content about myself, my mind, my heart, my journey with my God. I'm just sharing all the things. So stay tuned to my channel, subscribe, follow me on Instagram at Bring Myself in God, and I'll see you next time.